this episode of Velocity Labs, we're pulling the EJ22T out of this Subaru and we're putting it in that Bug. Actually, we're not putting it in the Bug in this episode. In this episode, we're just pulling the motor out of the Subaru. And then it's gonna sit on an engine stand in the corner of my garage. Probably for like a year.
All right, here we go. This is gonna be a step-by-step tutorial for removing an EJ22T from a 91 to 94 Subaru Legacy Turbo. Actually, it's really easy to do, so let's make a list. All right, so step one is done, and here's step two. Just kidding. All right, so first things first, let's get that hood out of the way. There's no reason to work around it, and it will need to come off to remove the engine anyway. Start by making some cardboard cushions for the corners, and then we'll move on to the hood. You can even do this with one person if you're careful. There's 4 bolts, and they're 12 millimeters.
So the way that those bolts cracked and popped, I don't think they've ever been removed. In fact, I don't think this body has ever been touched. So everything's pretty much original. And you can do this with one person if you're not worried about scratching up paint. Shut the garage door so I don't annoy the neighbors. That was a close one. Again, if we're sneaky, we can do this without scratching fenders. And I think we are. Jackpot. And then this is what the cardboard was for. Because those edges are really pointy. You want something soft on both of those.
All right, so next we're gonna drain the radiator and remove that. The drain plug is on the lower part of the radiator on the passenger side. Next up is the bracket bolts, and those are 12 millimeter.
All right, while the radiator's draining, let's take all the hoses off. So there's this little one right here. Unplug that guy. And this one is connected right to the engine. Could be like a throttle coolant or something, but I'm gonna leave it there. So any hose that I find that is connected directly to the engine, I'm gonna leave it on the engine in case I need it. So we're gonna leave that there. Next, hose clamps for the upper hose. Yep. No! Since this is wet process, I'm gonna switch to rubber gloves. Oh, I forgot tape. I need to label this shit. All right, break time. I need to go get tape. All right, I'm back from the grocery store. I got tape and I got frozen pizza, and I'll show you how to make these awesome. All right, so label everything. Because if you're like me, you'll forget 3 minutes after taking it off what it was. These 2 brackets just come off like that. And then there is wires for the fans. I think I have to get underneath to get those. So I'm gonna pop under there. Get these out of there. The clips are down here for the connectors. I broke mine because they're brittle and old. And then the transmission cooler lines are there. And looks like off the motor is gonna be easiest for this one. Actually, we'll go ahead and pop the coolant overflow off. That's gonna make things easier. Which is a 10 millimeter bolt right there. And this guy just scoots out. Now we can get that lower radiator hose out easier. Yeah, that's the way to go. Oh, coolant everywhere. Who would have saw that coming? Okay, now the radiator should be able to come out. Oh, nope, one more hose. So many hoses. Oh, is that transmission? Yes, it must be. Okay, so there's 2 transmission cooler lines, which is this guy right there, and another one down there. So those got to come off. About to get transmission fluid everywhere. And these are 8 millimeter as well. At least from the factory they are. Yours might be different. Don't need to label those guys because I'm not keeping them. In fact, I'm gonna cut those bitches because they seem stuck on there, and that's easier for me. Oh great, now it smells like transmission fluid in here. Gross. And the radiator's out. Look at all the room we have for activities. So much room in there. Alright, might as well pop the battery up next. Tie downs are 10mm. You can see my sweetly routed subwoofer line. Battery out. Alright, next up we're going to get rid of all the intake. Snorkel stuff. We can get rid of the charcoal canister, all of this stuff. And I'm using Subaru's guide just to help walk me through this. So if you guys like Subaru or VW content, check out that channel. It's called Subaru, and he does a really good job breaking down wiring harnesses, all sorts of stuff. But we're going to take these off next. So I'm going to go ahead and label these charcoal 1, 2, and 3. And charcoal canister looks like it has two 10mm nuts underneath it. Must be a vent hose. Don't care about it. Not labeling it. So there's a vent hose, I think, at the bottom. But yeah, charcoal canister is gone. And intake is next. Next we'll go with this guy. Should be the mass airflow sensor, so I'm going to label that. But does anybody else absolutely struggle with electrical clips? I mean, it's comical how bad I am at disconnecting these. So I was like, oh, just give it a squeeze, but it never fucking wants to come out. There we go. This guy right here looks like a boost solenoid, and that goes and tees off into the intake manifold. So we'll disconnect that guy. So I'm gonna label those first and we'll disconnect them. And when you're labeling, I don't actually know that this is a boost solenoid. I mean, it looks like one. So when I label it, I'm just gonna call it red boost solenoid, and I'll know what I'm talking about. Red boost solenoid. And I'm not gonna show me labeling everything else, because it's just kind of a waste of time. You guys can figure it out. Label if you want to. Ba-ding! Jackpot. These are all 8mm on this air box. Figure I'll start with this big guy first. So let's just undo the hose clamps first. And 2 10s down here. Then this whole box comes out. Just the hose clamp on this guy. Another boost hose looks like. Alright, we're going to take off the turbo hood scoop cooler thingy-mabob next, because it looks like it's going to be in our way. And I think there's just 4 10s on that. Jackpot. Hey, we can see the turbo. That's always fun. Look at that tiny little guy. Got a tiny little wastegate. Nice little downpipe. Really big cat on it. So instead of labeling this stuff, I'm just going to take a quick picture of it. A couple high-def photos so I can remember where it goes. Because it all looks pretty basic. I don't think I'm going to mess up these huge hoses. Alright, here's my frozen pizza trick. Frozen pizza. Pizza stone. And a whole pack of pepperonis. I'm only going to use about half this pack. But fill that mother up. Like so. And then we're going to pop that guy in the oven. And that is how your pizza turns out. Pepperoni heaven. Oh yeah. Pizza time.
Next, we're going to take off all the intake snorkel stuff. These are mostly clamps with a few bolts here and there.
So there might be an easy way to do this and remove this all as one big assembly, but I'm not seeing it, so I'm just kind of piecing it apart here. Oh, that is some shitty old plastic, or somebody, it might be JB Weld. I think that's JB Weld, actually. Somebody was trying to fix this cracked up piping. Not crack piped, cracked up piping. Make sure we're clear there. This is not a crack pipe Subaru, as far as I'm aware. Oh, these hoses are rotten. These things are brittle. And I have a solution for brittle hoses. Much better. Alright, next up we're going to go ahead and disconnect the downpipe. So we'll get the oxygen sensor out of the way, and I believe there's 5 bolts that hold the downpipe onto the turbo. Alright, so oxygen sensor is a 22 millimeter. I just remembered, I have just the thing for this. I actually made this because I had a tight spot on my DSM as well. Is that going to focus or is it not going to focus? There we go. So I just cut a little notch so I can get around the wire. So hopefully this guy works. Yeah. That is the way to go. There we go. Alright, we're going to get all the turbo bolts off next. I believe there's 5 of them and they're 14 millimeters. And you might need 2 wrenches to get these guys off. Actually, it looks like a couple of these studs are 17. Alright, so I'm having a hard time getting a wrench in to this bolt right here because of this bracket. So what I'm going to do is just stick a screwdriver in here. Give that bracket a little bit of a bend. Alright, so apparently this one is a 16 because my 16 fits on there fine. And yeah, so this guy was a 16 and that guy was a 17. I don't know if they've been replaced and are missized, but yeah, be careful, don't strip your bolts out. Alright, so I'm having trouble getting the downpipe disconnected. All the bolts are out, but it seems kind of stuck in there. I might need to wiggle the engine a little bit to get it separated, but I think that's good to go. So next I'm going to go ahead and take off the power steering pump. So we'll go ahead and do these shields over the belt. And those should all be 10 millimeter. So I think that guy's got to come off. It looks like a 12. Oh, that looks like the power steering adjuster thingy. Yeah, so there's that piece. Okay, so that bolt holds the power steering, I'm sorry, the alternator to the AC compressor. So I'm going to leave that in because I'm hoping to take the AC compressor out with this whole thing. Because I would like to run AC in the Bug. This belt has got to come off to get the power steering pump off. Alright, so to remove the power steering and alternator belt, loosen up this bolt first, and then this one. I already did this one, but that one should go first. But loosening that one should allow us to take the belt off. Oh, there we go. Belt pops right off. There we go. Now, the belt off. And I'm going to pop off this upper radiator hose. Okay, and then to take the pump off, there are 3 12 millimeter bolts behind these little spinny hole things. I just closed the garage door because it's the middle of the night. I don't want to bother my neighbors. And I also don't like doing things by hand, so we're hooking up some air again. And try to catch it with a magnet if you can. Oh, we're good. Once you get these 3 bolts out of the power steering pump bracket, then we need to take off these 2 line bolts right here, and then we can just move the pump aside without making a mess and draining it. Let's see if we can get some hot zoom action. Oh yeah. Close-up shot. And those are 10s. Whole thing can just get set aside like so. We don't need any of that. So the wastegate actuator hoses, I know what those do, so I'm disconnecting these. And the hose broke. That's old brittle hoses again. Oh yeah, it's just crunchy. Crunchy hoses. Rock hard. This is why I don't hesitate to just cut hoses if I'm having trouble with them, because these are all 25 years old or whatever. Okay, looking good. Power steering pump's out of the way. We're definitely not going to need that. Next, let's go ahead over to the other side of the engine, and we're going to get rid of the fuel lines and the fuel filter. Again, really old hoses, super brittle. Oh, I got sprayed. Should probably have safety glasses on for this part. But yeah, definitely want to do the safety glasses, unless you like gas in your eye, which, you know, if you're into that. Yeah, that guy's getting chopped. I have no patience for old brittle hoses. I don't know if I mentioned that. I've probably mentioned that a few times, haven't I? This guy's getting chopped. There we go. Chopped. So to take the filter itself out, looks like there's just this little clamp, like so. I'm gonna take the entire filter out. And Mick says this bracket can be useful in our bug conversion. So we're gonna take that too. Otherwise you wouldn't have to take this off if you didn't want to. Looks like 210s. Go. Top lines next. Fuck it, cutting it. Go. Okay, gas lines are out of the way. All right, while we're over on this side, we're gonna go ahead and get rid of the throttle linkage, and then we'll get the heater hoses over there as well. So there's a couple big zip ties I need to get rid of over here. All right, so it looks like this whole bracket has to come off, and there's two 10mm nuts. Pick these up where I can see them. And once they're loose, they just come out. So yeah, that's the way to do that. For the throttle cable, take the two 10mm bolts down underneath off. Leave these bolts alone. I had loosened one of these, but you can just leave those alone. Swing it up around, and then these little tabs, clippy things, will come right out. Just give them a good little wiggle. Done. So throttle cable, we can just run this back. It's got to kind of come down underneath the AC condenser, and then run it back up here, and then out of the way. All right, next up we're gonna go ahead and get these AC lines out of the way. Before I did this video, I already took it to a service station and had them drain it. Turns out there wasn't anything in it. There was no pressure in the lines anyway. But if you are gonna pull your engine, take it to a station first and have them drain the lines. Or if you're not gonna keep your AC compressor, you can unbolt this just like we did with the power steering compressor, and just move it out of the way without disconnecting the lines. But you can even just test if you have any pressure at all. Just open up the high side or the low side line for that matter, and push the little valve down. You'll notice I have nothing. There's nothing in these. So we're good to go to disconnect those. And the reason I'm disconnecting the lines is because I do want to keep the compressor. Because I'm hoping to get AC in the Bug, and why not just use the stock compressor. So, all right, so we're gonna disconnect these two front lines. There's a couple 12mm bolts right about now. Okay. And with these guys, I'm gonna put them right back into the compressor. In fact, I think I'm gonna take this whole assembly and cut it actually, because as long as I have the fittings, an AC shop should be able to custom make me new lines. So I'm putting these back. You can go ahead and disconnect these once you get your AC drained. I'm gonna put them back and cut them, because I'm gonna keep them. I'll just cut the hose, but I think as long as they have this fitting, they can work with it. And if not, I'll be buying a whole new assembly. So
here goes cutting, number one. This guy we're gonna cut. Yeah. All right, next we'll go ahead and disconnect the brake booster line. Next up is heater hoses. Let's get this guy out of the way, which are these two right here. The connection's down here on the engine itself, and then on the firewall, just follow these two. So those guys are next. And those look like they can be either a Phillips screw or an 8mm socket. We all know how I feel about hoses that are being a pain by now, right? Yup. Dead. There's one. And there we go. Heater hose number 2 out of the way. Alright, heater hoses are off. Right underneath the heater hoses. So the heater hoses were right here. Right underneath that, you'll see 2 more little rubber hose lines. These are for the transmission cooler. Once again, those are 8mm bolts or a Phillips head screwdriver, whichever one you want to disconnect those two. But once again, those look like they're going to be a pain, so I'm going to cut them. I don't need those hoses anyway. So if you want to do it the hard way, just there's 8mm bolts right down there, and you can take them off like that. I might try to get them off there. Those ones I can reach. So I'm just gonna try to get these off real quick, and if it takes me more than 5 seconds, they're getting chopped. Yep, and those are old and stuck, so guess what? Alright, so before we get too far on this, the power lines are in my way, so I'm gonna get those out of there so I don't wreck them. So right here we have the starter cable, and it comes around, and it's right here too. So I'm gonna label all that and disconnect it. Alright, so got the starter labeled up. I'm going to get rid of those wires to get them out of my way so I can get to the transmission cooler lines. Alright, so the ground to the chassis is 10. This one's 12. I might want to use an impact on that because that's just kind of twisting it. Yep. Alright, so that one's got a bolt on the bottom. Make sure you bolt that too, or else the bracket is going to bend. Jerks. There we go. That's easier than struggling. Alright, so we'll get this part of the harness out of the way first. So this looks like just a clip. There we go. And then under here is a 10mm. Looks like just a squeeze. Yep. Now we can take this out, down and around. Now we can get those guys right there. Oh, yep. Yep. There we go. We're gonna take out this transmission bolt pretty soon here, but we got the main wiring harness right here, and that's coming up, and it's got a bunch of connections right here, so we're gonna disconnect all of those greasy bastards. Yeah, I think that's the last clump of wires is the ones all up in here. So let's disconnect those, and then we can get the hoist mocked up and start taking out the engine to tranny bolts. Or nuts, I believe they are. Alright, so once we get all the electrical connectors by the throttle body off, then all that's left is the mounting hardware, the bolts to the transmission and the motor mounts. So we're going to go ahead and rig up the hoist. Alright, so on the front of the motor, we're going to hook the chain in right on this alternator bracket right here. So we'll start right there for the front. And just got a big beefy bolt here. There we go, front's hooked up, and then for the back, we're gonna go right next to the turbo. So we have the turbo right here, and then right next to it, there's a, looks like a lift point, but that's what we're gonna use. There's a little thing right there that we can fit the bolt through, and we'll thread it right there. Beautiful. So up next, the transmission to engine bolts. First one is right here next to the turbo, so we're going to take that guy out. There's one on the other side, and I believe it is the one that goes through the starter, that guy right there. And then there's two more underneath, but we'll start with the top ones. Just get yourself a nice long wrench. It'll come out pretty easily, actually. So that's number one. Some reference here is... Go. This is number two. Stabilizer bar bolt out. Okay, now with the heater hoses out of the way and then the two transmission lines out of the way, down next to the steering rack, which is this thing right here, and next to the axle, right down up under there is a 14 millimeter nut. And we got to get to that guy. I don't think I can get a wrench down in this way. All right, with the front wheels off, I think I can get up underneath, get those two 14 millimeter bolts I was talking about. This actually gives quite a bit of room up in there. Basically what you're gonna do is come in, get up on there, and then get that bolt out. It's gonna be really hard to see, but that's the plan. All right, so good news. The first 14 millimeter on the driver's side, I was able to get with a couple different wobble extensions. I could actually just get up right underneath the axle to get it out. So now all I gotta do is get the one on the driver's side here. All right, and I think the other 14 millimeter bolt that we need to get to, we can access down through here. And I believe it is that guy right there. Got it. Jackpot. Last thing we need to do is remove the nuts on the bottom motor mounts. I forgot to do this and ended up popping one of the motor mounts off. Pop. What pop? And what's interesting is they were fluid filled. So here's the two nuts that you need to remove. Luckily, one of my motor mounts broke. And the other one we're going to go ahead and disconnect now. The correct location of the motor mounts is on the cross member here, right up by the power steering rack, and it's that guy. Let me turn this. That one right there is the nut that we needed to disconnect. Got to zap that guy out of there, and then the engine should pop out. I know what you guys are thinking. You're an idiot, and you would be right. Woo! Probably should have loosened that up first. That was definitely it. Just popped way out. All right, I don't know if the transmission needs to be supported or not, so I'm gonna go ahead and just jack it up a little bit, because it seems to be tilting quite a bit. Ooh, yeah. So jacking up the transmission, I think just freed up the engine, because everything just kind of shifted. So yeah, if any of you know if the transmission is supposed to be supported while we're pulling the engine, let me know in the comments, because I have no idea, but it seems to be working for me because it's freeing up the engine quite a bit. Well, I definitely messed up the AC condenser. Mick is going to be disappointed in me because he's like, put a piece of plywood over the AC condenser so you don't rip it up. I ripped it up. Oh well. We're just about off, but I still got to come forward just a little more. But I think that might have done it. So I don't have any support on the transmission now. Yeah, it comes forward enough, but then it's getting caught on the AC condenser. There we go. That did it. I just had to completely wreck the AC condenser. Just give it a little jiggle. But we are out.
go ahead and lift her up. Piece of cake. And that is a motor that is ready to pop out. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the jack stands here, and we'll lower the car down. Done and done. Check out this motor mount that I destroyed because I didn't disconnect it. That guy right there. I think that was that pop, and then it was fluid filled. So the motor mount should have just been disconnected like that one right there. This one I just destroyed by hulking it out of there, and then it leaked its motor mount fluid, whatever it was filled with, all over the floor. Didn't smell very good either. All right, so we need to get that engine stand together because you can't just leave this hanging around all day. I'm impressed with that crane though. This has actually been sitting like this for about 24 hours. I know it doesn't seem like it in the video, but it hasn't dropped an inch. And it's on the farthest extension, so it's on the 1/4 ton, which is what, 500 pounds? I don't know. I don't do math. Anyway, let's go ahead and get it on an engine stand. And let's see if we can do this like magic. Hey, get back here, I need you. You gotta hold my engine, stay put. Man, these Harbor Freight self-assembling engine stands are pretty great, but they'll run away on you. Anyway, let's go ahead and sneak that guy out. So what I'm gonna do is jack the car back up so I can swing the engine over to the engine stand.
All right, we're gonna call that done. The legendary EJ22T will be sitting here for a while until I can save up some funds to keep moving on this project. But up next, we're gonna be putting a new clutch in the DSM and then taking it racing.